The main problem with the Admirals as a whole is that in literally every scenario we see them fight a serious battle, they aren't able to or choose not to use their full power, which leads to them being shown in a bad light most of the time. Except for maybe Greenbull, but yet again he didn't get a full opportunity to have a full-on fight. This video isn't to prove why Admirals are stronger than Yonkos or why they have amazing feats. It's simply to stop the slander and to save some of you guys, because as more time goes on, the Admirals get downplayed and treated as non-top tiers, even though not one Admiral has most likely displayed their full power on screen. They still get disrespected because they supposedly have anti-feats, and that's exactly what I want to discuss. Each Admiral's so-called anti-feats. In other words, moments in the story that made them look weak. Before we continue guys, subscribe to the channel and join my Discord if you want to talk One Piece with me. The people in there are pretty ruthless and unwelcoming to new people, so I don't like to promote it as much, but join at your own accord. Now let's begin with the so-called Admiral that started to tarnish the Admiral name first, and that's none other than Fujitora. Fujitora was first introduced to us in Dressrosa many years ago. He was sent there to go assist the civilians and keep them from harm's way, since Luffy and the Straw Hats were about to start an all-out assault against Doflamingo. Many things conspired in this arc with Fujitora, where he honestly didn't assert dominance as an Admiral, and therefore made him look underwhelming if you take it at face value. But if you take the time to understand Fujitora's character and his motives, there is a reason behind his so-called fraudulent behavior. The first one being Sabo being able to equally stalemate Fujitora. The context of this fight is simply Fujitora suppressing himself to the point where Sabo could hold him off. At that point, Sabo wanted to protect Luffy from Fujitora, but what Sabo didn't know is that secretly Fujitora wanted Luffy to defeat Doflamingo and liberate the citizens of Dressrosa, because this was something that the world government essentially allowed Dofi to do, which goes against Fujitora's morals. Fujitora then fights Sabo in a way to make it seem like he was actually holding him off. Furthermore, we get confirmation of this when Sabo says if anyone finds out what you're thinking, you will be in trouble. And Fujitora says all anyone will see is that I couldn't get past you, like he intended to happen. He even states that the Marines cannot be the hero of this country. This also correlates to him stopping the birdcage and saving the citizens, which is why he wanted Luffy to beat Dofi for him to save the country. Even other vice admirals found this situation to be fishy, portraying that Fujitora was holding back. And again, Fujitora had a similar situation where he kept going back and forth with Luffy and wasn't able to actually capture him. But it was obvious that Fujitora wanted Luffy to escape. Hence, even though the dice roll didn't land on a 1, all the rowboats surrounding Luffy's ships didn't miraculously hit him. Not just this, but he made it seem like he was attempting to capture Luffy, when all in all, it was another act like he did for Sabo. And to add on top of that, Fuji started to express his liking towards Luffy and wished he could see him. So within the Sabo fight and within the Luffy fight, we get to see Fujitora's character. He does not like the injustices that the Marines allowed to happen, and he essentially wanted Luffy to liberate the citizens. His next appearance was at the Reverie, where he fought the Revs, and once again they were going back and forth with Fujitora. It couldn't be more clear that Oda was trying to convey that the Admirals had to hold back severely, and that was reiterated to us 3 times in that same chapter. And it was even said that if they could fight anywhere else but here, then they can easily turn the tides of this battle. This goes the same for Greenbull as well. And now that's exactly the next person I want to talk about. Greenbull by far has the worst introduction amongst the Admirals. I'm not gonna lie, the brother looked pretty shameless. He didn't have to put his hands up and yell off the top of his lungs while shaking and sweating heavily. But if you really take the time to understand what's going on, this does not downplay his strength. Greenbull pulls up to Wano in order to capture Luffy and the Straw Hats. Greenbull then fights against the Scabbards, Momonosuke, and Yamato. He honestly ends up dealing with all of them pretty easily, besides the fact of Momonosuke using Boar Breath on Greenbull, which was very effective, and it looked like Greenbull was getting pressed by Momo. Momo had Greenbull's eyes rolling back from those attacks. The average One Piece power scaler will look at this and be like, Greenbull sucks, he's getting fodderized by Momonosuke. Who is Momonosuke? He's not even that strong. How could this happen to an Admiral? But if you apply logic to the scene and realize that Greenbull, who is a forest man made of leaves, branches, and trees, then it would make sense a fire hyper beam would be able to burn his forest body very effectively. Even though Momo's Boar Breath isn't as strong as Kaido's, Kaido's was still able to incinerate a mountain. Momo should be more than effective against some goddamn grass and trees. Same way how Sabo's fruit would be effective against Greenbull as well. This is Pokemon logic. Fire types are stronger than grass types. Same way how Ace was able to match Aokiji's Pheasant back with his fire powers, even though Aokiji is a million times stronger than Ace, because certain abilities work well against other people, even if you're a million times stronger than them. Greenbull got hit by Advanced Conqueror's Haki from Yamato and brushed it off like it was nothing. Oh, I guess Momo is more powerful than Yamato. Yeah. No. Now moving on, Greenbull gets stopped by Shanks, and Shanks makes him stop what he's doing with just his Wi-Fi Haki. You guys have to realize this guy is currently fighting against these Scabbards and Yamato and a huge ass dragon. He hasn't even finished the fight yet, and he still has to deal with Luffy, the man who defeated Kaido, and his commanders. Then you add Shanks, who's probably more feared and notorious in the eyes of the Navy, and who is said to have a lot of big shots on his crew. He lets you know with the same amount of Haki that he will pull up on you right now and jump your ass with these guys. The smartest thing Greenbull can do in that situation is evacuate. Let me give you guys an analogy. Imagine you're a grown-ass man and you're about to fight, I don't know, 12 fourth graders all at once by yourself. And by the way, imagine you're like 6'3", 250 pounds of muscle or whatever. Then while you're fighting 12 fourth graders at once, while keeping in mind their grown-ass teachers are watching in the back ready to jump in whenever they want, some 10th graders drive by and roll down the windows and shoot some warning shots at you to let you know that those are all the 10th graders' younger siblings that you're fighting. The smartest thing to do is get out of there because you will most likely die. But just make sure to not put your hands up and start shaking like Greenbull did, because that's pretty shameless. Greenbull even says he's not willing to fight you guys today, meaning he wouldn't duck Shanks on any given day. It's shameless how he reacted in that moment, but the fact that he didn't continue to fight shouldn't undermine his strength at all. I understand people want to use this as a scene to undermine him against Shanks, but besides that, he even redeemed himself to some degree by capturing Weevil, which I believe to be pretty strong. Next Admiral is the fan favorite, I believe, and it's none other than my guy Aokiji. Aokiji hasn't really been a controversial character strength-wise until he was most recently shown in Hachinosu against Garp. Garp had to face off against Aokiji and some of the Blackbeard pirates and still managed to get the best of Aokiji in their exchange. I mean, like, he was straight up blitzing Aokiji twice. So the problem here is, how can an Admiral in his prime get worked up by an old Garp who's out of his prime? Well, this performance wasn't the best representation of what he could do, since he was fighting, as the community likes to call it, mentally nerfed. And this is actually a real thing, and it's not cope. This part of the video is the most important, so pay attention. There's a common theme in One Piece that you will not be able to fight at your best if you are conflicted about certain circumstances you are facing. And the exact opposite is also true. Several statements and moments imply this. Nami back at Water 7 says hesitating makes you weak. Rayleigh says to never doubt is power. Now the most important statement that applies to the situation is when it's mentioned that when a person cannot act without feeling guilt, he is at his weakest. And this directly correlates to the Aokiji and Garp situation. This is Aokiji's father figure and his mentor that took him under his wing within the Marines and made him his disciple. He's a person that Aokiji has a lot of respect and admires. This would logically mean Aokiji shouldn't have an easy time trying to kill Garp and fight him seriously. And that was said to us on 2 occasions in this fight. Aokiji saying he was worrying about Garp, then Garp says that makes him soft. Exactly what I just described. Feeling guilt makes you weak, which by the way resulted in him getting blitzed. Another statement is Garp telling Kuzan that wavering is a sign of weakness, like we just talked about, and he gets blitzed once again. And on top of that, he's using very weak attacks against Garp, signifying that he's holding back. In this fight, Garp confirms that if you're conflicted, it's a major weakness, and this is a common theme in One Piece. But there's other instances in the show where it might not be stated that a character is conflicted or mentally nerfed, and it's up to us as the readers to come to that conclusion. But thanks to Oda, he makes it pretty clear to us, like with Garp and Luffy. Garp essentially letting Luffy pass and not being able to stop him in that moment, resulting in Garp getting hit and Luffy making his way to Ace. And this also applies to Kizaru in the entirety of Egghead Island, but we'll talk about that in just a second. He used more and better attacks in Marineford. Even if you don't think he has an awakening, he was able to completely transform an island's climate with whatever he was doing on that island, and he definitely did not showcase that level of strength against Garp. So in conclusion, Aokiji did not fight to the best of his ability, meaning him getting beaten by Garp at times doesn't make him look weak. Now, Kizaru is definitely going to be the most controversial person to talk about here, since a lot of people want to use what happened with Kizaru as proof that Admirals are trash to help their agenda. Kizaru got defeated by Luffy on 2 different occasions throughout the Egghead arc, and this isn't me trying to give Kizaru excuses or trying to say if he tried his hardest he could maybe defeat Luffy. I'm simply using one of these story themes that we laid out already and explaining to you why it applies to Kizaru. Let's first discuss the emotional connection Kizaru has with the characters on Egghead. In chapter 1089 to chapter 1091, Kizaru arrives at Egghead, where he fights Sentomaru, and his internal conflict between his duty as a Navy admiral and his friendship with his lifelong friends is introduced to us. We see several moments of flashbacks with Sentomaru and Vegapunk alongside Bonnie and Kuma. Kizaru mentions he'd known Vegapunk for a very long time, and we even see young Kizaru and Sentomaru playing while Vegapunk watches over them. Other wholesome moments include all of them bonding together, dancing and having a feast, enjoying each other's company, so it would make sense that Kizaru has built a strong relationship with these characters over the years. And that's exactly what is portrayed to us throughout this arc. There's a beautiful collage made to emphasize this. The first statement is Kizaru saying he obviously doesn't want to kill Vegapunk. Kizaru shows a sigh of relief, thinking that the battle is over. Kizaru closing his eyes, attempting to end Bonnie. Kizaru flashing back to the memories with Vegapunk mid-battle. Kizaru seemingly worrying about Bonnie and Sentomaru. Kizaru mentions he's miserable right now to look at. Kizaru remembering how cute Sentomaru was. And lastly, Kizaru having an oddly strange reaction to Vegapunk's supposed death. These are all things implying to us that Kizaru is mentally conflicted. He doesn't want to hurt his friends, and it's something that's bothering him. And this also shows up in his actions, like Kizaru telling Bonnie not to worry. He will end this quick and it won't hurt, showing us he still cares in some regard. Kizaru had multiple opportunities to kill Vegapunk this arc, but he wavered many times. Kizaru, in the face of Vegapunk, takes his time and tells Vegapunk that killing him is hard on him, knowing damn well Kizaru could have cooked everyone in that room in an instant the moment he stepped inside, even Vegapunk. Kizaru hesitating and being conflicted gave Luffy enough time to stop him before he kills Vegapunk. Another very clear moment of this is when Kizaru was stated to be aiming for the clouds when he was supposed to hit the Vega tank with Vegapunk inside it, essentially missing on purpose. And what reinforces this is the fact that Kizaru can be so precise with his laser beams to the point where he can send one flying across Marineford in order to break the key for Ace's handcuffs. Furthermore, showing not just through his words and his expressions, his actions indicate his mental conflict. And some of you might think that doesn't transfer over and correlate in his interactions with Luffy, which I would disagree with. Luffy is essentially what's preventing Kizaru from having to execute his friends, and it looks like he was essentially able to use him as a scapegoat. Saturn says Kizaru is moving slower than usual in completing his task, and given the circumstances, he can understand the disappointment. And Saturn said this when Luffy just knocked out Kizaru after they got done fighting, meaning what Kizaru was feeling is transferring throughout their fight too. More recently, when Luffy sent Kizaru flying, he lands on the marine ship and seems to have given up on fighting, and tells the marines to tend to his oddly specific, very deep wounds while he covers his eyes. Aside from the obvious visual indications and wordplay telling us Kizaru is hurting from within, a credible Japanese translator for years who gives us more insight and clarification on this moment tells us that Kizaru's wounds are more traumatic than physical, and is a common expression used by the Japanese people. You might think the fact that he killed Vegapunk debunks everything I'm saying, but it really doesn't. Same way how Aokiji didn't want to fight and kill Garp, he still managed to do his duty, but just not at the best of his ability since he was mentally nerfed. And that's the same with Kizaru. He was able to kill Vegapunk, but he didn't do it to the best of his ability. Aside from all this, similar to Aokiji, we haven't seen Kizaru use anything new besides what we already seen before, with the exception of his clones. He basically spent the whole arc doing light kicks, laser beams, and a laser sword, which once again we've seen him do this pre-time skip against Fodder Supernova. Kizaru is confirmed to have one of the highest levels of advanced Armament Haki, which he never displayed in this fight, or he never really displayed any Haki to begin with. Some people don't want to believe Admirals have Awakening. Maybe it's for agenda, but the fact that they didn't use it shouldn't be a reason why you think they don't have it. The only two who are probably capable of using Awakening were Aokiji and Akainu, and that's because they had to go to a different island. These guys had to relocate to an inhabited island to fight, probably because they would have destroyed Marineford or wherever they were at if they didn't relocate. Like they literally did to Punk Hazard, they changed the entire climate. In every instance we see the admirals, them using their awakening in their circumstances wouldn't make much sense. So the fact that we haven't seen their awakening shouldn't be a reason for you to believe they don't have it. From an ability perspective, Kizaru hasn't used everything at his disposal and is suffering from a mental conflict throughout Egghead. Therefore, to completely judge Kizaru's strength in this arc is simply not fair. And I know he got turned into a pancake at the same time as Saturn. I'm not defending that treachery. The last and final admiral, well, now he's called the Fleet Admiral, is none other than Akainu. Now Akainu seems to be the most globally respected in terms of strength, which is at least a good thing, so I don't see many people ever really downplaying or arguing against Akainu with some silly takes. The only things I do see are people clowning him for not leaving his desk, which is hilarious. But the one time he actually did manage to leave was to fight and stop Kuma, and he ended up blowing off a chunk of his face. And yet, Kuma was still able to run away. And some people try to use this as a way to downplay Akainu. I don't think that's a downplay on his attack power at all. If anything, it's a testament to the people's endurance. The attack that Akainu has used has landed on 2 people, and both times they were able to endure the attack to some degree. What more damage can you expect from someone who's removing chunks of your body? Whitebeard's true strength to fight in Marineford came from his crazy levels of endurance. No matter how many holes, the stab wounds, the gunshots, the lasers, you name it, Whitebeard endured all of that, allowing him to keep fighting. And some characters are just built like that. And this is the same with Kuma. Kuma endured so much damage climbing the red line. He was also heavily damaged prior with the revs, encountered Akainu, got his head disintegrated, got stabbed by Saturn when he arrived on Egghead. All this he was enduring for the sake of saving his daughter. Now we know in One Piece, another strong theme as of late is nothing can really stop the power of love. No matter what you threw at Kuma in these moments, more than likely it wasn't going to stop him from saving his daughter. He even managed to overcome Vegapunk's programming that should have left him a vegetable. So this is definitely not a downplay on Akainu. And lastly, it's 2024. If people are still calling Akainu a fraud for his fight with Whitebeard, then I'm flabbergasted. For one, I'm sorry to say it, but the admirals were holding back once again, because they wanted to protect the island, and the dialogue on screen makes that quite clear. Now the anime makes Akainu look worse than he did in the manga. The fight starts when Whitebeard was about to charge up a quake, and Akainu stops him, and Akainu stops his Bicento with just his leg like a mini clash. He then fires a magma fist at Whitebeard, which he blocks with the quake. The next significant moment is when Akainu manages to get a hit on Whitebeard after he suffered from a heart attack. This doesn't make Akainu look bad, it's just a smart move to make in a war where you're trying to kill the enemy. They then don't interact for a bit, and we see Akainu focusing on stopping Luffy from escaping with Jinbei. He then gets snuck by Whitebeard, a rageful Whitebeard who just saw his son die, and gets quaked in the back of his dome and pummeled to the ground. But immediately, like I say immediately, the next panel after, Whitebeard gets a chunk of his brain blown out. And then Whitebeard immediately counters with a quake to Akainu's chest and sends him falling underground. Whitebeard's most recent attack was the only noteworthy attack Whitebeard has landed on Akainu, since the first one was a sneak and it wasn't really fair. And Akainu managed to get up after a chapter or 2 in decent shape, and it continues to try to stop Jinbei and takes on the entirety of the Whitebeard pirates. In conclusion, Akainu blowed off Whitebeard's face, and Whitebeard sent him flying underground with a quake. This is all while Akainu is trying to minimize the damage done to the island. And yes, the fact that he used a bunch of raining, fire fist, or whatever the hell he did, he was using it to destroy the ice so their footing could be fucked up. So yeah, Akainu having anti-feats or being downplayed doesn't really make sense. And yeah guys, that's pretty much all I have for you guys in this video. Hopefully this video puts a rest to all the Admiral slander, and you guys refer this to a friend or two to give them some insight if they generally think the Admirals have some bad showings, or they're just hella weak and they're on the same level as Katakuri or fucking Law or some shit like that. This shit's kind of crazy. Make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.